He stole my ideas. I am Sophie. I was the quietest person in my office. I worked hard, stayed late, and trusted my senior colleague, Mark. When he presented my ideas to the boss as his own, I felt completely invisible. But that betrayal gave me the courage to finally find my voice. Have you ever felt like you were standing in the shadows? Like your hard work was a secret that only you knew? For a long time, I thought that being quiet was the same as being professional. I thought that if I worked hard enough, the world would eventually notice. But in the busy, loud world of a big office, silence can be a dangerous thing. Today, I want to tell you the story of how I lost my confidence and the moment I finally decided to take it back. The office was always cold. That is the first thing I remember, the constant hum of the air conditioner and the smell of stale coffee. My desk was in the corner, far away from the big windows where the managers sat. I liked my corner. It was safe. From there, I could watch the world move without being a part of it. I am an analyst, which means I spend my days looking at numbers, finding patterns, and solving problems that others find boring. To me, numbers are honest. They don't lie and they don't play games. Every morning at 8:30 a.m., I would sit down, open my laptop, and disappear into my work. I was excellent at my job. I found mistakes that saved the company thousands of dollars. I created systems that made everyone's work faster. But when it came to meetings, my throat would tighten. Whenever the boss, Mr. Henderson, asked for opinions, I would look down at my notepad. I had the answers. I knew exactly what to do. But the thought of 10 people looking at me, waiting for me to speak, made my heart beat like a trapped bird. Mark sat 2 desks away from me. Mark was the opposite of me. He was a senior associate, 10 years older, with a smile that seemed to reach every corner of the room. He was charming. He knew everyone's name, from the security guard to the CEO. "Morning, Sophie," he would say, leaning against my desk with a paper cup of expensive coffee. "Working hard again? You're the engine of this place, you know that." I would smile shyly and nod. "Thanks, Mark. I'm just finishing the report for the quarterly review." "You're a lifesaver," he'd reply. "The team would be lost without your brain." At the time, those words felt like a warm blanket. I felt seen. I felt appreciated. I didn't realize that Mark wasn't looking at my talent to celebrate it. He was looking at it to use it. I spent 3 weeks on the Green Future project. It was a plan to reduce the company's waste and save 15% on energy costs. I stayed late every night, the only light in the office coming from my screen. I didn't mind the silence. I felt proud. I felt like I was finally doing something that mattered. I showed the first draft to Mark. I wanted his advice because he was the expert. He looked at my slides, his eyes moving quickly. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he looked at me and gave a small, almost worried smile. "Sophie, this is interesting," he said softly. "But it's a bit technical. The board might find it confusing. Why don't you leave the files with me? I can help you polish the language. Make it sound a bit more executive." "Really? You'd do that?" I asked. "Of course," he said, patting my shoulder. "We're a team, right?" I sent him the files that afternoon. I felt a sense of relief. I was grateful to have a friend like Mark. I was happy to stay in the shadows while he helped me shine. I didn't know then that the shadows were about to get much, much darker. Before we continue, I want to ask you, has anyone ever taken credit for your hard work? How did it make you feel? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. The following week, the atmosphere in the office began to shift. It wasn't a sudden explosion, it was like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice it until you are already off balance. Mark began coming to my desk more often, but he was different. He didn't lean against the desk anymore. He stayed standing, looking over my shoulder at my screen. "Sophie, did you finish those energy cost projections?" he asked one Tuesday morning. His voice was lower than usual, almost a whisper. "Almost," I said, looking up. "I found a way to automate the data entry. It's going to save the department 10 hours a week." His eyes sharpened. "Great. Send me the raw notes, just the rough version. I want to review them before the big meeting on Friday." "Oh, am I not going to be in the meeting?" I asked. My heart gave a small, nervous thump. Mark sighed, a sound of fake sympathy. "I tried, Sophie, truly, but Henderson wants to keep the meeting small. Just the senior strategists. You know how he is. He thinks too many people in the room slows down the decision-making. But don't worry, I'll make sure he knows you helped." I felt a cold prickle of doubt. Helped? I didn't just help. I built the entire system from scratch. But I was Sophie, the quiet one. I didn't know how to say, "That's not fair." Instead, I just bit my lip and whispered, "Okay, I'll email them to you." Over the next few days, the clues became harder to ignore. I noticed that when I walked into the break room, Mark would stop talking to the other seniors. I noticed I was being left out of email chains that I used to be a part of. When I asked him about it, he would just wave his hand dismissively. "Technical glitch, probably," he'd say. "I'll talk to IT. Just focus on the data, Sophie. You're so much better at the details than I am." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if I didn't believe him, it meant my only friend in the office was a predator. Friday arrived. The air in the office felt heavy with anticipation. The boardroom door was closed, but I could hear the muffled sound of voices inside. I sat at my desk trying to work, but my fingers were trembling. I kept looking at the clock. 10 p.m., 10:30 m. I needed to print a document, and the main printer was located in the small alcove right next to the boardroom. As I waited for the machine to warm up, the boardroom door opened slightly. Someone was coming out to grab a water carafe. In that second, silence fell over the room, and then I heard it. "And that," Mark's voice rang out, confident and bold, "is why I decided to restructure the entire energy grid for our regional offices. I call it the Green Future Initiative. I spent many late nights calculating these specific figures to ensure we hit our targets." I froze. The world seemed to stop spinning. The only sound was the loud mechanical ticking of the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. I stepped closer to the door, my breath caught in my throat. Through the gap, I saw the large screen. There they were, my slides, my graphs. My color-coded charts that I had stayed up until 2 a.m. to perfect. Even the small typo I had made on slide 14, the one I forgot to fix, was there, glowing on the screen for everyone to see. "Incredible work, Mark," Mr. Henderson said. I could hear the sound of him clapping. "This is the kind of leadership and innovation we need. This is going to save us a fortune." "Thank you, sir," Mark replied. I could hear the smugness in his voice, the pride of a man who had stolen a treasure and was being praised for his hard work. "It was a challenge, but I'm always happy to go the extra mile for the firm." I stood by the printer, my hands ice cold. I felt like I was disappearing. Not just in the office, but in the world. I had given him my best, and he had taken it, wiped my name off the cover, and sold it as his own. I didn't storm into the room. I didn't scream. I did what I always did. I turned around, walked quietly back to my desk, and stared at my blank computer screen until my eyes burned with tears I refused to let fall. Lunchtime came, and the office erupted in celebration. I heard the pop of a champagne cork from the direction of the conference room. Laughter drifted down the hallway. Everyone was congratulating Mark. I couldn't stay at my desk. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. I stood up, walked to the bathroom, and locked myself in the furthest stall. I sat on the closed toilet lid and put my face in my hands. I didn't sob out loud. I didn't want anyone to hear me. But the hot tears leaked through my fingers anyway. I felt small. I felt like a ghost. I had spent years being the reliable one, the quiet one, thinking that my work would eventually speak for me. But I realized then that work doesn't have a voice. Only people do. The door to the bathroom opened. I heard the clicking of high heels and the sound of two women from the marketing department talking as they touched up their makeup. "Did you see Mark's presentation?" one asked. "He's definitely getting that promotion to director now." "He's so talented," the other replied, "and so charming. It's rare to find someone who has the brains and the personality." I held my breath, praying they wouldn't notice the shoes in the stall. They laughed, the door swung shut, and silence returned. Rare to find someone with the brains and the personality. The words cut through me. They thought he had the brains. They didn't know he was just a mirror reflecting my light. I walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. Looking in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her eyes were red, her hair was slightly messy, and she looked defeated. "Is this it?" I whispered to the empty room. "Is this how my career ends? In a bathroom stall while someone else lives my life?" I walked back to my desk. Mark was there, surrounded by 3 other colleagues. When he saw me, he didn't look guilty. He didn't even look nervous. He looked triumphant. "Sophie!" he called out, his voice booming. "There she is, my favorite assistant. Everyone, Sophie helped me gather some of the data for the Green Future project. She's a rising star." He said it like he was doing me a favor. He was giving me a crumb of his feast. "Can I speak to you, Mark?" I asked. My voice was thin, but it didn't shake. The others wandered off, and Mark turned to me, his smile fading into a look of bored patience. "Look, Sophie, I know you're probably feeling a bit left out, but that's how the corporate world works. I had to package the idea so Henderson would buy it. You're great with numbers, but you don't know how to sell. Next time I'll put your name in a footnote, okay?" A footnote. My life's work. A footnote in his story. That was the moment something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, cold realization. If I quit now, he won. If I stayed and did nothing, he won. "I understand," I said. "Good girl," he said, turning back to his computer. I sat down. I didn't open my email. I didn't look at my old reports. Instead, I opened a new blank presentation. I knew something Mark didn't know. I knew that the Green Future project he presented was only Phase 1. I had hidden the most important data, the Phase 2 implementation plan, in an encrypted folder on my private drive. I had intended to show him later, but now I had a better plan. Phase 2 was the real money maker. It was the part that moved from saving energy to generating revenue. And Mark didn't have the password. He didn't even know it existed. For the next 4 days, I didn't go home until 10:10 p.m. I didn't talk to Mark. I didn't talk to anyone. I worked with a level of focus I had never felt before. I wasn't just working for the company anymore. I was working for Sophie. I prepared a second presentation, one so detailed, so brilliant, and so complex that only the person who created it could possibly explain it. On Thursday afternoon, I saw an alert on our internal calendar. Emergency Board Meeting, Implementation of Green Future Project. I took a deep breath, smoothed my skirt, and sent a single email to Mr. Henderson. The subject line read, "The missing 40%, what wasn't included in Friday's presentation." The morning of the implementation meeting, the boardroom felt different. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and leather chairs. Mark was already there, leaning back, looking like a king who had already won the war. When I walked in, he didn't even look at me. He was too busy laughing at a joke Mr. Henderson was telling. I sat at the very end of the long table. My hands were under the desk, gripped tight. "All right," Mr. Henderson said, tapping his pen. "Mark, let's get started on the rollout of the Green Future project. We've allocated the budget. Show us the step-by-step." Mark stood up, adjusted his tie, and opened the file. "Certainly, sir. As I explained last week." He stopped. He clicked the next slide. A red box appeared on the screen. Access denied. Encrypted data required. Mark's smile faltered. He clicked again. Another red box. "Ah, just a small technical hitch," he muttered, his face turning a slight shade of pink. "Sophie, did you lock these files by mistake?" I didn't look down. I looked him straight in the eyes. "No, Mark. Those are the Phase 2 files. They contain the actual revenue-generating logic. You wouldn't have them because they weren't part of the Polish I gave you." The room went silent. You could hear the faint whirring of the projector. Mr. Henderson leaned forward, his eyebrows knitted together. "Phase 2? Revenue-generating? Mark, you didn't mention this in the initial brief." Mark scrambled. I was saving it for a surprise, sir. Sophie, just give me the password." "I'm afraid I can't do that, Mark," I said. My voice was calm, the calmest it had ever been. "Because to explain Phase 2, you have to understand the core mathematics of the energy grid. And since you told the board last week that you did all the calculations, I'm sure you can explain it to them without the slides." Mark opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked at the screen, then at the board members, then at me. His charm, his executive personality, his mask, it all began to melt. He didn't know the math. He didn't know the logic. He was a bird with no wings. It's quite complex," Mark stammered. "The energy dividends are based on the seasonal shift." "Mark," Mr. Henderson interrupted, his voice like ice. "Sit down." I stood up. My legs felt like lead, but I forced them to hold me. I walked to the front of the room, plugged my own laptop into the cable, and opened my master file. "The Green Future project isn't just about saving energy," I began. "It's about an integrated system of carbon credits that can be traded on the open market. Here is the data Mark couldn't show you, because I am the one who created it." For the next 20 minutes, I didn't feel shy. I didn't feel invisible. I spoke with the authority of someone who knew every number, every decimal point, and every secret of the project. When I finished, the room was silent again, but this time the silence was full of respect. 2 weeks later, Mark's desk was empty. He wasn't fired immediately, but he was moved to a junior position in a different branch. He couldn't handle the humiliation of being seen for what he really was, a shadow. I am now the project director for Green Future. My new office has a window. I can see the city, the trees, and the people walking below. I learned something painful but beautiful through all of this. I used to think that being good meant being quiet. I thought that if I stayed in the dark, my work would shine bright enough for everyone to see. But the world doesn't work that way. Value is like a flame. If you don't protect it, someone will blow it out or try to steal the warmth for themselves. I am still a quiet person. I still prefer my tea in a quiet corner, but I am no longer invisible. I found my voice not by shouting, but by standing up for the truth of my own worth. If you are listening to this and you feel like the quiet one in the room, know this. Your silence is not your weakness, but your silence should never be a hiding place for people who want to steal your light. Speak up, not for pride, but for justice. You are worth the space you take. Up in this world. If you believe in standing up for yourself, please like this video and subscribe to Study English TV. It helps us keep telling stories that matter. And if you're ready to take your English to the next level, join our free English learners waitlist in the description for weekly stories and lessons. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.